Welcome in, everybody, to a special episode of ZB's Horsepower Talk. As always, I am ZB, Zack Brown, and joining with me, as always, is former 410 Sprint Car crew chief and mechanic, my dad, Jeff Brown. And with us today, a legend, three-time World of Outlaw champion, Sammy Swindell joins us. Sammy, thank you for taking time out of your day for coming on to there.
Thank you. I'm glad we could get it together.
First things first, Sammy. We always talk about, whenever anybody that comes on here, we want to get to know them a little bit of background on yourself. What got you started into racing, and what ultimately led to sprint car racing and ending up being one of the best ever to do it in sprint cars?
Well, my dad started racing in 55, the year I was born. So they had me going to the races, like the week after I was born. So I've been around and he did a lot of just local racing. It started out being kind of almost like a car you took the fenders and stuff off and a flathead, and then he was running, like, I guess you would call it a modified maybe, but it was a little coupe, body with back when he started, they were flatheads, and then they went to 6-cylinders, and then he was one of the first ones to go to the Chevy V8s, and then he drove some late models and sprint cars. So I've just been around racing my whole life, and that's what I was interested in. He had me doing things, it's 11, 12 years old, building cars or doing just whatever.
Yeah, we know all about being born into racing, and one thing I kind of wanted to know, who were some of the idols that you looked up to, like race car drivers, when you were growing up, and kind of who did you try to take your racing style and trying to make that kind of emulate what they did?
Well, it was a lot different then, and you didn't have all this instant stuff. You either got it through a newspaper or some magazine or something, but my dad was first. I mean, he won a lot of races around here, wound up running the club for quite a few years, and was booking races for that club. And so, I mean, it was like every time he went somewhere, I was there. So I started in July in 71. So, like my first night, he got a new car together and was letting me run the old one. I did a little practice there before the season started. They had an open track, some laps, and did pretty good. But he crashed the car, and then we kind of fixed the front end and stuff on it, and was kind of late getting to a place because we were still finishing up his car at the last minute, and went up to Milan, Tennessee, and they just sent us out there to qualify, and it's like about run up over the fence. There was I was all over the place. So we found out that the steering had a tooth broke in it, so I didn't get to run the first night, but the second night, and it being July 4th weekend, we were at West Memphis for a Saturday night, and he wound up running third. I run fifth. The next week we went to Greenville, Mississippi, and I won down there. So it's like and then we went down there on every Friday night, and I won every race down there the rest of the year. And
well, there you go. You had to brag a little bit on that one, didn't
you? Yeah. And then we wound up 6 features there at West Memphis the first year. Starting in the middle of the season. Well, back then, usually the year ended about the Labor Day weekend, because that's when school started and football started. So the seasons weren't as long as they are now. And but I come back the next year, and we won the track championship in that division like 3 years in a row. And the second year I started running the sprint. That next year I started running the sprint car too for Bobby Sparks, and we won the track championship for like 3 years in a row. So it was like 74, I think. We started doing a little more traveling, and we go up to Hopstock on Sunday nights, and they had about 4 or 5 50-lap races that we went to, and I won all 3 of them, or all 4 of them, I guess, whatever it was. But and then we started traveling. You know, Bubby Jones came down sometimes because he was driving for M.A. Brown, and we kind of got to be buddies. He said, "Well, you need to come up here," and he kind of showed me how to, work with the promoters and stuff. I mean, back then you could get some money to go race in different places and do things, and I learned a lot in a short period of time.
Yeah.
But like 74 was the first year we went out to Phoenix, out there to Manzanita for the Western World. That's all we were going to run. But I mean, they got us, motel sponsored, and they got some other sponsors and paid us to show up. And then while we were there, the guy from Ascot, Ben Foote, says, "Hey, you need to be over. I want you at my race at Ascot the next week." So we run the Pacific Coast Open. And we had 2 rooms on the beach, and they were paying us to be there, and it was like crazy. It's like a whole different world all of a sudden.
Dad, you got some questions for Sammy? I know you grew up a lot in his prime, in his era in the 80s and 90s, and you've seen him race and how dominant he was. So I'm sure you got some questions to fire off to him.
Oh yeah, like when Ted Johnson was forming the World Outlaws, I think it was right around '77. Was that something he contacted you to come join the Outlaws, or you saw that was happening, or you got a hold of him? Because you were one of the original ones, if I remember correctly. Am I right?
Well, I mean, yeah. I mean, when he was starting that, it was just someplace, and he got a few of us together, and we went to somebody's house, and we had a little. He was talking about trying to do some stuff, and putting some things together, and we got to run a few races there. That first year that he started, I think the World Outlaws in '78, but the team when I was running for, we only ran like 10 of those races because it was just the team I was with couldn't afford to do all that traveling. But we got started there and did some stuff. I wound up getting the FedEx sponsor there for '79, and we ran quite a few of the races. We didn't run them all, but we still run quite a few of them. And there in '80 until that kind of went away there. In the middle of it, I think '80 it was, and then Nance came along and asked me to drive his car, and that was the first year that I got to run all the races, and we won the World Outlaw Championship. We came back the next year and won again.
No.
And so
I actually forgot about the Nance car. That's right. You did run that car.
Yeah. Well, that year we ran. I think it was 100. We ran 136 nights, and I won 56.
I mean, that's pretty good.
Yeah, they weren't all World Outlaw races then, but I mean, you could run wherever you want to run, and it's like we were doing good. So when we sat down with Laverne there, we put a program together. It's like showed him how to maybe organize this deal. He I asked him, I said, "How many cars you sell?" He said 45. I said, "Well, you're going to have to get another welder because when we do this, we're probably going to sell you over 200 cars." And we did. I think it was like 226 after we ran that first year with the Outlaws and won. And just had some ideas how to do things, and we made it to where, I said, we just got to build a car. You got to build a car so a guy with a little toolbox can put it together.
Right.
And instead of just selling Mirage, Rod, and Hines, we're selling it. I said, I said, "You're a machinist, right?" And he says, "Yeah." I said, "You can make fixtures?" He said, "Right." And I said, "Okay, we got to make fixtures for all this stuff so you can get your grandkids out there to build all these parts. Instead of selling the Mirage rod, you sell the Mirage rod, the Hines, and the nuts that was already set to go in the car." But I said, everything has to be exactly right for this to work. Made it happen. So it was just a good deal for him and a good deal for me at the time.
But, that's pretty interesting. You were saying about building the cars. Now I remember, I think it was '89. I believe we were in Florida, and you had the independent front suspended car.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
was that was all on your own design.
Well, I had Dick Anderson help me,
Okay.
and he kind of knew where to be with some of the A arms and stuff, and we just worked it out. And I had a place where we could build it, and uh, we put that together. But it was really, I mean, that was going to be a better deal. The front end, it was just the rack and pinion was a problem.
Yeah, I was
Yeah,
going to remember you had it was steering problems. I know you set fast time like every night because
yeah,
you could run a lot bigger left rear tire, and you're just nobody else was even close to you in time trials. I
yeah,
remember it looked like it was a handful trying to drive that thing, racing.
yeah. Well, that was the whole deal. It was like when you go out there and qualify, and you don't steer it very much. You just kind of hold the wheel. It was fine. I mean, but we were able to. I mean, there were so many things we could do because we could make it turn, and it had like 50% more roll stiffness in the front.
Right.
Uh, like usually we would run say 10 and a quarter bars in the back. Like there at Volusia, we were like 975s,
Okay.
just with it, the back end up, and the same thing. We could make it turn, so we could run less stagger, and it's like every every place I ran that I had fast time. I didn't get to run it but about 5 times, and we should have won one of the races there at Volusia, but it was like what I'd come to find out was because uh, like on a regular, the fuel pump was still in the back of the motor. Then it had to go from from the power steering pump. I'm sorry, from the power steering pump, it had to go to the rack through the servo.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And at first it was, like the lines were jumping. So we put hard lines on it. Well, that helped some. Uh, but it was still because the lines were so long and the steering needed to be so quick that there was a delay. So you'd go in and it didn't turn. So you turned it more and I turned it too much.
Oh,
It's like, well, then you're trying to catch it. So it's like, I would tell Nick, it's like, I said, well, it's like, the car can't keep up with the steering input. It's like it's delay. And the last time I ran it at Eldoran, we ran pretty good. But we took the power steering off,
okay.
and but it was like I could say I could keep my standard car within like 4 inches of where I wanted to be, and this one was like it took like a foot.
I got you.
So you start running the cushion and running in a line. Like I said, it would it would tell me to turn it left, and then when I turn it some more, well, then it turned too much, and I had to turn it back. And you start chasing it. But a lot of times when you didn't steer much, like the qualifying, it was like nice.
Yeah, I could remember that down there, and then I'm pretty sure me and Dad and my brother we were walking over looking at that, and that was that really intrigued my dad. He thought that was pretty cool how you had that independent suspended cars. That's a pretty interesting story behind the whole thing. I never knew how many more times you may have ran it, or if you ever perfected it completely or not. But
Yeah, yeah. Well,
it's
I
a
mean,
wonder nobody else has really ever tried with. Again, it's kind of a copycat league, and nobody's really come out with anything new probably since then. That's
well,
pretty cool.
it's just they made a rule that you had to have a beam axle.
Oh, did they really? Oh, okay.
What they said, I don't know if it's still in there or not, but
It probably is.
yeah. But after I ran it, what I was going to do, and but after I run what the 4 or 5 races, and like Ted said, don't even bring that car. You can't run it. I said, there's no rule that says I can't run it. Well, there will be a rule. You know, I only ran the all. It was all star races that I ran, and we were second there at Volusia the one night, and up at the top, and There was just a few laps to go, and Kenny Jacobs come off the bottom, and I guess he didn't expect me to be there, but we got together, hit the wall, and it broke the heim on the upper control arm. You know, they're saying the wheels would fall off. Well, I probably had about 50 degrees of camber, and it ran the last lap with, and still was like third.
Okay.
It was a little wobbly, but I made it around. But it would have been it would definitely been better than what we have. But and what I was going to do was just put a regular steering back in it, because at first Dick, he said, "Well, you got to do this," and what I was going to do was put like an idler bar in it, for the toe.
Oh, okay, yeah.
It would have slid back and forth, and then we could have, kept the bump steer out or put whatever you want in. But there was another way to do it that would have actually worked. But the steering was the problem. The rack, it's just, and what it was we were trying to move the fluid real quick, and so it didn't want to go as fast as what we needed to be for a sprint car.
This episode is brought to you by SeatGeek. SeatGeek is a live entertainment platform rethinking ticketing by caring more about their fans, teams, and venues. They are powering a new open entertainment industries where fans have effortless access to experiences in teams, venues, and shows, and have seamless access to their audiences. With trusted consumer marketplace and innovative enterprise ticketing technology, SeatGeek has what you need for any sporting event. Make sure you use my promo code ZBMedia to get $20 off your purchase from SeatGeek. That is ZBMEDIA from SeatGeek. $20 off. You can't beat that. Check them out now. Get your next concert, sporting event, or anything else from SeatGeek. Back to the show.
That's a very interesting story. I was completely intrigued by that. Now, throughout the years, one thing you were known for, you had some just gorgeous race cars. My personal favorite was the TMC car. Is there any one, paint scheme that really stood out that you really liked above all the other ones? You had, the Channel Lock car was awesome. The Hooters car, there's a lot of really, really good looking cars.
Well, there was a lot, but the TMC was really kind of flashy for the time and different, with the prism stuff that nobody else did. The old Milwaukee had the gold leaf stuff on. It was all hand painted. There's a lot of, Channel Lock car was one of my favorites because that's the first car I owned. Well, the Hooters car was the first one that we ran the 1 year, but that's when I just decided I'm just going to do this myself. When the live TV was coming, it was easier to get the corporate sponsors involved. So it's like, well, I run into some people. We got the Hooters deal, but they decided not to come back. And then after I was running the truck deal at the same time for Channel Lock, so we talked to them, but then the Hooters come back and said, well, we decided we want to do it again. I said, well, I've already made a deal with Channel Lock. So, but
you lose.
I had, I had 7 years with them and quite a few years with a lot of different sponsors and different people. But there's a lot of good ones, but it's just, most of the cars were kind of clean. We didn't have stripes. We didn't have a lot of different weird colors and stuff. And it was just, that was my whole deal, is to be able to see it from 100 feet away.
Yeah.
Right.
And a lot of people, they'll draw something on a piece of paper. Oh, that looks cool. And you go on the track and you can't read anything on it.
Yeah. And that. I remember the pale blue one, and I remember that one more than anything. I think that was my childhood that I grew up with, seeing that one race around Williams Grove when the Outlaws came into town, and may or may not have played it a few times in the World of Outlaws game that they had back in the day. We had a list of the top 5 rivalries in race and motorsports history, and Dad and I both had you and Steve Kinzer at towards the top of our lists. It was actually the top of Dad's list. Talk about that rivalry, and is it still you still consider it a little bit of a rivalry between you and him, even though he's not racing anymore?
Well, I mean, it was good for both of us because, I mean, if you go back and look through all the other things, there was, there had to be two people that made a series. A lot of times, I mean, it took at least two. It could have been good to have five, but I mean, we actually, we're kind of friends most of the time. It's like, um, but they wanted to win all the races, and I wanted to win as many as I could.
Right.
So, when if I won too many, well, Carl would get mad at Steve, and then Steve would get mad, and it's like, but we both got our share. He was able to run all them years. But if I'd have had somebody like Carl or your dad there or somebody like that, it would have made my life a lot easier because I was having to do this with a couple other kids most of the time.
But it's funny you said, like the series takes two, and for sure that was, you thought World of Outlaws, especially, 80s and 90s, it was Steve and Sammy. So you had the guys, you had the Sammy fans that hated Steve Kinzer and the Steve Kinzer fans that didn't like Sammy. But one thing they did do, they showed up to the races, and supported the series. So that was definitely, like you said, that worked out for everyone on that whole deal.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was the same when I started at home. Like I said, in the second year, I won like the track championship 3 years in a row, and I won every race but two, and one I had a flat tire, and one we broke a rod. So, I wound up that people start booing you, and I'm 15, 16 years old, and it's like, well, I'm doing my job. Why are they booing me? And it's like,
racing the only sport you boo a winner, so that's
yeah. It's like Hooker Hood that raced. He'd say, well, 50% of the people come to see me win, 50% of the people come to see me lose, but they all come, so I win.
Right, exactly.
I looked at that and it's like, okay, well, it makes sense, but it's like there was some deals. It's like, I mean, people would come down and just be angry because I'm winning. And you're a kid, these old people come down yelling at you and screaming at you. It's like, well,
yeah. Well, so Sammy, the state of sprint car racing is, I think, is at almost at an all-time high. The competition is better than ever from what I've seen. Everybody seems to be competitive, especially the World of Outlaw races. Seeing all of your experience through all these years, is this probably the best you've seen sprint car racing?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of people involved in it that have money or backing, and a big thing too you got to think about that. Back when we were in, it's like the parts broke a little more than they do. Like the cars are like bulletproof a lot. Or they've got enough motors or enough pieces. I mean, we would go down the road with an open trailer, one frame. We'd be lucky to have a spare front end or a spare rear end or spare set of rocker arms or something. But it's like now they got all this stuff. They can keep it going, keep it fresh, and there's not a lot of cars that don't finish. Back in the 70s when I started and stuff, there was a lot of times that, there's always 5 or 6 cars that didn't finish a race.
Yeah.
Something broke or something happened, but it's made it a lot better because we made the parts better.
Right. And kind of bouncing off that, and actually some people, we sent a little poll out, and a couple people had similar questions. And you kind of touched on it earlier, how there's always rules and how you want to change stuff. You don't want to make somebody too good, and it ends up being worse for the entire field if somebody just stinks up the entire season. Do you think there are maybe too many rules at this point, and especially in World of Outlaws and in general sprint car racing? And do you wish teams, I guess, had more freedom, kind of like how you did in the early days, to do kind of what they want to gain that little bit of an advantage?
Well, it'd be nice, now I think with some of the people that are involved, that it's always people that have a lot of money. They can do a lot more things. So, I didn't always have a lot of money. I mean, even with the TMC, he had a budget of so much money he wanted to spend and different things, and I had to work through that. But, the thing that surprises me is like the series, nobody ever asked me what I thought. And it's like now, the cars are so dependent on the wings. And what they've done is, I think, actually made it worse. And they're looking at it the wrong way. But it's, when it went to the flat wings, and now one of the series went to the smaller wicker bills, or they had the big wicker bills and stuff. It's like you're just creating a big hole. So if you make the hole smaller, the cars will be better. I mean, if you look at F1, they've done the same thing. They changed the whole car, went to ground effects, so the air is not way up in the air doesn't go way up in the air. It's what goes under the car makes more difference than what goes over the car.
Right.
But what they did when they went to the flat wings, and the bigger ones, the 5x5s, I mean, you go look at the pictures, and the wings are like maybe 16 or 18 degrees. Well, these guys are running 30 degrees now, and and then getting them way up. Well, they're creating a big void behind the car. So I mean, there's times when I've run in behind people and the car just like slides up, or somebody cuts across when you're turning, and it's just like you lost the grip.
Yeah.
But
you don't think about like an open wheel car pushing that big of a hole in the air, but that big wing definitely makes move some air around for sure.
Yeah, I mean that's the biggest thing. I mean, if they wanted to do it, I mean they could go to a dish wing and go to a angle limit, and say you can only put 18 degrees in.
Yeah.
The cars will go slower and it'll be harder, but it'll put more of the driver in, and maybe can't run wide open, but
sometimes slower makes better racing anyway.
Yeah. Well, it's when you're wide open, it's like
nobody can pass.
Yeah, and somebody gets in front of you, then you're in a wake. Well, you slow down more.
Right.
So the only thing to do is to decrease all that bad air, and you can run closer to get, but be slower probably. But it's now with the tires that they changed.
Yeah.
Everybody's looking for that one little piece of grip. And if you're not on the line, you're off at a lot of places. I mean, some places will have a couple grooves, but it's probably 50-50 anymore.
Yeah.
Half of them will, half of them won't.
Yeah, and that's for sure. Gotta give another shout out to another partner of ours, one we've had for quite some time, Dubby Energy. Make sure you check the link out down below, dubby.gg. Use my promo code ZBHP. Get 10% off any order. I'm sipping on some good stuff right now. I've got the Pineberry Splash Hydro series right now. Some great stuff, I'm telling you. I've had them for a while, and I mean, I'm particular on the drinks I get. Energy drinks, hydration supplements. There's some good stuff. I've had them for over a year now, so check them out. W.GG, promo code ZBHP, 10% off your order. Back to the show. I did want to touch on this series, and I'll let you get a quick question here in a second, Dad. But the High Limit series is the talk of the town now, with Kyle Larson, Brad Sweet taking over that, basically buying out the All-Stars, creating their own series. Now, they've tried other series throughout the years to go toe-to-toe with World of Outlaws, and there's never been anything that's been sustainable for too long. Do you think the High Limit is a sustainable series, and you think that Larson and Sweet are doing the right thing and going about it?
Well, people just talk about Larson and Sweet, but I think there's probably some more people that's
right
making this thing go. really, but in the back behind the scenes. And they're probably people that can wait for a bit to make it right or make it bigger. And what they're trying to do is something we tried to do, or my car owner did, Harold Annette, was what he wanted to help Ted, and he wanted to help him promote, get some other people. And with his contacts, he had some people in the trucking business, different things that would wanted to get involved, but they never could get together on what Ted wanted. He'd always say they have a meeting, and that's, well, what happened? He says, well, I pushed him a check, and he pushes it back. He wants more. I give him what he wants, and he wanted. That's what he told me. So like whatever happened between them happened. But then he said, well, I'll just start my own series. But the problem was, is like the tracks were already like indebted to Ted. Mm-hmm. So there was a lot of places we didn't get to go to at that time. So it's like they didn't have they couldn't book a date at these places like some of the Highland stuff probably can or can't do now.
Yeah.
That was the USA series, correct?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
And you'd have to know everything that went on behind the scenes to know really what happened or be real close to it. And people look and say, well, that, another series coming, it doesn't work. Well, there's usually a reason one way or the other, but it seems like the people that's running the high limit deal can sustain for a while. And it still wouldn't be a bad deal. What they're doing is a lot of midweek races and stuff, so that just gives you more places to run, if you're allowed to run them.
Right. And actually, as we're recording this right now, they're racing one of their midweek high pay races, the high stakes races, and I think that's a really good idea and opportunity for especially smaller teams to get involved and have a chance to get a really good payday, because it's real expensive now these days to race anywhere.
Yeah, well, we're supposed to race here at West Memphis, and they got rained out there on the 9th, but they rescheduled it for the 23rd. But I talked to the guy that runs the track there, and I said, well, I'll just bring my 360 car over there. It's a small track, if I can qualify, make the race, that'll be fine. It's like, you're probably not going to win it, but he says, well, they said the 360s can't run.
Oh, really?
That's what he told me. So, but now they're coming back, and I've been running some races with Dale Howard. He went and picked up a motor to run that race there, but he has a Dash 12 motor, so we're going to put it in my car and just go see what happens. Right. If we go out at the right time, we got a chance of making the race. Well, it's I think $1,500 to start. So
right.
If I start in the top 10, I might run the whole race. But if I start in the back, I might run a few laps. But it doesn't cost us very much to go over there to qualify and see what happens.
For sure. What else you got, Dad?
Well, Sammy, you won pretty much everything there is to win in sprint cars. It's sort of a two-part question. Is there any one victory that really stands out in your career? And also, is there anything that you have not done that you wish you could have accomplished?
Well, like I said, I've won most every one of the bigger races at one time, or maybe once, but it would have been nice to win the Nationals a few more times. I was close. There's a lot of, you like to win all those big races. I had another 2 or 3 of the King's Rolls won, right near the end or the right last corner. And there's things that could have happened that didn't, but I guess there's things that could have happened where I didn't get any. But so I'm okay with where we're at. But I kind of thought that early there I was working towards running Indy cars, and I got a shot at it with really a good team, and was able to do some things, but
remember watching. I believe it was the Indy cars at Pocono, and watching you on TV, and that was one of those things that everybody that was in sprint car racing was a Sammy Swindell fan watching IndyCar.
Yeah, when we were there, it's like that was part of it. Is they called me. I was in Aberdeen, South Dakota, and they called me, "Hey, can you come here?" I think his name was Bruno Giacomelli or something, was at Michigan, and he can't handle it. He's a road racer. He can't get around this place. So they called me to come in there, and it's like, I said, well, Emerson Fittipaldi was running their car. And he said, well, he's been here 4 days, and he's got the car pretty good. We're going to put more wing on it. You can run flat out around there. And I went out there, and within a short period of time, I was running faster than he ran with more wing. So it's like, well, what do you think? And it's like, well, if I was at Eldora, we probably put more right rear in it because it's pretty tight. So we made some changes and did other things, and kept getting better and better, and went faster there in 45 minutes than the other guy did within 4 days.
Well, yeah, that I was actually going to talk about your IndyCar and how all that happened. And you see Kyle Larson, he's going to be trying the doubleheader this year and racing the Indy 500, first time he's racing the IndyCar. So what type of advice would you have for Larson, if any, hopping into an IndyCar for the first time like he is, and how you go about that from transition from a sprint car over anything?
Well, he's maybe in a different situation. He's in a deal where, it's kind of similar. I was in a good car, but they're not telling him that he's got to bring the money to keep his ride.
Yeah.
And it's like, what the biggest thing is what Rick Mears told me. I asked him because he used to run the sprint buggies or something when they had to jump there on the front stretch there or right in the infield there, run around. He'd run some races there that did that. And so we talked a few times there at Ascot. So when I got there, I asked him, I said, well, what am I supposed to feel? He said, well, the biggest thing is because you're sitting so far forward that the rear's going to move way. He says everything's in the steering wheel, all your feel. If it's like, if you're not holding some wheel in the left, it goes up, it can get loose and it can snap around. So, but it's because you're sitting and your feet are right up there where the front axle is. It's a lot different than having your butt right on top of the rear end. It's like a sprint car and stuff, but he's drove the stock cars they'll have some of that tendency because you're so far forward. So he's got some experience in that, and it's really they're easy to drive, and I love the road course. What little bit I got to practice on or test on, that was more like a sprint car than most anything. That you could kind of throw the cars around and slide them a bit and turn them and with the brakes and the steering do things. But he shouldn't have a problem. It's like when I went to NASCAR, and I think it was Buddy Baker told me, oh, you got to be 40 years old before you can learn how to drive these cars. I said, buddy, these cars are so slow. It's like, I don't know what, but because and what you couldn't get through to a lot of those things is like, if you're running a winged sprint car, it's like a rocket. And so it's like your brain, your computer is going at a way faster speed.
Yeah.
Then when you get in these other cars and the tracks are bigger, everything really slows down. If you'll look at my first race, after the pit stop, the right front tire came off in Michigan, and I got a picture of the car, and I'm driving it and drove it back in the pits. And so that day I had a contract, but then it wound up was like, well, after they all got to talking, it's like, well, I needed to bring money. It's like, I'm just a kid that runs sprint cars. I don't have money.
Yeah.
But they had people that was paying them and paying a lot of the other people, cash. But the one guy did go to jail. So it's like I couldn't compete with that.
Yeah.
I couldn't bring them that much cash every race and say, yeah, we're doing good to give me enough time to but it was right after that test, that race, it was like Roger Penske. This is, if you can get a whole year and stuff, we need to talk. So it's like, well, cool, I got it made. but it's all the other stuff off the track that I really wasn't ready for.
Right. What's all these cars that you've raced through your entire career, including NASCAR, IndyCar, which type of racing / race car is your favorite, or which do you prefer over one?
Well, I mean, from what I've done so far, I mean, the sprint cars are definitely, because things happen so fast. And, I always liked the faster. It was like the faster we went, the less people I had to race with. Because you had to be smooth and you had to be right on line and everything. Where you get on little tracks and you do horse cars around and stuff. But, running the miles and stuff was pretty cool, because it's like you get everything just right and you could just really go. But that's the thing about the sprint cars. I mean, you get on the little tracks and things happen so fast.
Yeah.
That you have to be, like you're on you're making correct, you're doing all this stuff, and everything else is like it slows down. And every time I get in something, it's like, even if I get in a 360 car from running a 410, it's like they're so much easier because you're going so much. It seems like everything slows down in your mind, and that's the part people don't. It takes time to get to that point to where you can think things that happen. There's a lot of guys that have done it pretty easily, but I can see where kids coming now can get in a lot of trouble because things happen way too fast.
Yeah. What you got?
Well,
I was just going to say, we were just talking about in one of our shows about, like the sprint cars on a quarter-mile track, and how, you're running 10, 11-second laps around there with 24 other cars, how fast you catch the other cars, in the back, and just, one split second of the thought, and all of a sudden you get passed. So that's just right in line with what you were saying. But I did have one guy who asked me, he sent me a Facebook Messenger. He wanted to know if, like someone new starting out in sprint car racing, if as a driver, if you had any advice for like a younger kid on, how to, improve his career. Since you've done it all, he figured you'd probably be the best one to ask.
Well, I mean, my thought on the kids and stuff is like, you need to bring them up and go one step at a time.
Right.
Same when I had Kevin doing stuff, we did karts, and he started when he was probably 6 years old. And it's like, if you can win and win consistently and run up front, then we'll move to the next class, or the next thing. But I was able to put him in pretty good cars, and and tell him what he was going to expect. But I could see where people that don't have that experience and don't have that, it could be tough. But that's the biggest advice I'd have, is like, just let them get comfortable and let them win races.
Yep.
If they can't win races, just put some more money in that till they do win races. Get them the best stuff for the best people, and then move up to the next class. But if you just go and stick somebody in a 410 sprint car, it's like
a little tough.
Confidence goes a long way, that's for sure.
They may never get it because things are going to happen so fast. It's like they're just not ready for it. I mean, I can see from what I did, when we were running some of the places, and you go to the Hall of Fame, they got that wall there with all the track records for every year, whatever at Ascot, and they're like 19 seconds or 20 seconds, and they get down into like the 17s or 16s or 15s. And then we go there with the wings and we go lock fat. But it's like, I got to go through all that progression. Right. The sprint cars were probably a 600 horsepower deal. Well, now they're getting close to 1,000.
Right.
If you turn somebody loose in one of those cars that's got 1,000 horsepower and they only weigh 1,200 or 1,300 pounds, it's like, you're either going to be surprised or you're going to be really disappointed.
and that's why
I need a new fire suit.
And that's why it's really impressive seeing these young drivers now. You've got Corey Day. He just won a high limit race, and he is 18 years old. So, it's crazy to see kids like that already going. Larson, I guess, did it, but he did it the right way. He started off small, like you were saying, and worked his way up. And right around the corner from where I live is Millbridge Speedway. And kids from usually the NASCAR driver kids, they're out there racing every Tuesday night, and they're on the karts, and they progressively work their way up. And I think they're doing it the right way, like you were just saying, working their way up little by little. And Keelan Harvick, he just won a freaking street stock race or something. He's good. So
you're talking about Harvick's kid.
Yeah, he's pretty good.
Seen him in some Legends cars. Something showed a deal to watch that. That was pretty good.
Yeah, he's not too shabby at that. He
got past it. He got up and got after it again and got back.
Yeah.
So, but it's you just got to be there, but you got to learn what you're doing. So. I can't advise somebody just to throw somebody into a 410 car and say,
right.
Go.
For sure. Well, Dad, if you got one more, I got one more as well. And we'll wrap it up.
No, go ahead.
No, you got it. I'll end it.
What's that?
I say if you got one, I'll end it.
No, I don't have one. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, Sammy, this has been awesome. This is the last thing I've got for you, and we really appreciate your time again. But this one's kind of fun. You've raced pretty much every racetrack you can think of, and there's probably countless that you have, and there's a lot of small towns out there. But what's your favorite racetrack?
I would probably have to say Knoxville because they were like, they've come a long way from when I first went up there in like '74, and they put a lot into that place. And I've always liked the track because it's pretty fast for a half mile, especially with as little bankings it has. But I used to like Eldora when Earl had it. When you used to have to run the fence to be fast, and there wasn't a lot of people that could do that. But it changed a lot, so it's kind of dropped down the list a little bit. But there's a lot of places that I like to race, different things, and some short tracks, bigger tracks. We went to Springfield one time after they had been there, and I think that's when I got the track record then, which is the fastest lap on a dirt mile. But
we're still claiming it in the Zemco car, though, Sammy.
Huh?
I said we're still claiming that with the Zemco car since that was Dad's car.
Okay. Well, no, we were at Springfield and it was pretty quick, but they'd run them modifieds there, and it was black from the bottom to the top, so it's like you could run anywhere on it. And it was fun. You didn't get stuck by you got to somebody, you had to be in the one lane, and we're going 180, 185, so it was pretty cool to run on something that you could just.
That's fast in a sprint car.
That's ridiculous. That's insane.
But we were when I first went to Bristol, we were there, and when I was walking out, there was a Tennessee trooper there, and he says he found out I was from Tennessee, so he said, "You're the fastest one." I said, "Well, what did you get me on the radio?" He said 185 there at Bristol, but
holy cow!
Yeah. Yeah, I'm glad they went away from the dirt at Bristol. It was cool to see, but well, especially NASCAR, that didn't need to go there. I wish the Outlaws and stuff raced there when they had the dirt on it. Maybe would have made it better the second time around. But I think it just needs to stay off there. I'm all for going to actual dirt tracks.
Yeah, but it's nice if we could go there and fill that place up.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Yeah, I would say that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think that would be a big purse for that one.
Oh yeah, that's for sure. Well, Sammy, listen, we appreciate your time here as we wrap up this episode. It'll be out anywhere you get your podcast. Obviously, we had some technical issues, so it'll just be the audio version for anybody seeing. Because Sammy disappeared, but it's okay. He's been on the line the whole time, and it was an amazing conversation that we had. This was awesome. And actually seeing you two talk back and forth, it's like old sprint car guys talk at it, and I just let you guys have it because that's always a fun conversation. So make sure you guys check this out, follow it, share it with everybody, because Sammy's a wealth of knowledge, and he's one of the best to ever do it. So Sammy, I appreciate your time, and hopefully we'll get to chat again soon.
All right. Yeah, well, thanks for inviting me.